My sister told me our father was too weak to talk on the phone. That was a lie. He'd been trying to call me for 6 months, and she'd been deleting every voicemail before I heard them. I found this out on a Tuesday, standing in a hospital parking lot in my paramedic uniform, blood still under my fingernails from a call that didn't end well, when a text from an unknown number lit up my screen. "This is Walter's neighbor. He asked me to tell you he loves you. He said you'd know why." And I didn't know why. That was the problem. Welcome back to Silent Ties Tales. If you love real family secrets and emotional twists, hit subscribe right now, because today's story is one of the darkest we've covered. Stay till the end, trust me. Now, let's begin. You're the paramedic, Diane said flatly on the phone that Sunday, 3 days before, like she said every Sunday, like the job was the whole reason I couldn't be trusted to come home. You'd think you, of all people, would understand why Dad can't get on the phone right now. His oxygen's low. Talking wears him out. Since when does talking wear out his lungs, Diane? He's not on a vent. Renee, I'm not doing this with you tonight. Doing what? Answering a question? Mom's asleep. I have to go check on her. The line went dead the way it always did, mid-argument, like she'd planned the exact second to hang up. That was our rhythm. 9 years of it. Every Sunday at 7, a call that lasted 11 minutes if I was lucky, delivering a headline about our parents' decline, a fall, a new medication, a bad night, and never, not once, a video call, a photo, an invitation to visit that didn't get walked back by Wednesday. "Mom's not up for visitors this week," she'd say. Or, "Dad's confused when new people are in the house, even you, especially you. It upsets his routine." Or my favorite, delivered like a gift, "I'm handling it. That's what I'm here for. You focus on your job." I believed her for longer than I want to admit. Limousine, finding the driver's seat of the ambulance, still not moving, staring at that text from a neighbor I'd never heard of, when my partner Sam knocked on the window. "You good?" My dad's neighbor just texted me that he loves me." Sam frowned. "That's not usually the kind of text that comes with good context." "No," I said. "It's really not." I called the number back. It rang twice. "Hello?" A woman, older, careful. "Hi, this is Renee, Walter and Carol's daughter. You texted me?" "Oh, thank goodness. I wasn't sure that was even a real number anymore. I found it in your dad's old address book, from before." She stopped herself. He waved me down at the mailbox. "He does that sometimes, when your sister's not looking. He said, tell Renee I love her, tell her I've been calling." "He's been calling me?" "That's what he said, dear. I don't know more than that. He gets confused sometimes, so I don't know how much to How confused?" I said. "Confused like memory, or confused like is he okay?" "I think you should come see for yourself," she said, gently, the way you'd tell someone their house was on fire without wanting to be the one who set off the alarm. It's been a long time, hasn't it? 9 years, I thought. Long enough that a stranger at a mailbox knew more about my Father's Day than I did. "I'll be there this weekend," I said, and I meant it before I'd even finished the sentence, before I'd thought about scheduling, or Diane, or what I'd say when I knocked on a door I used to have a key to. I didn't tell Diane I was coming. That decision would matter more than I understood at the time. The house looked smaller. That's the thing nobody warns you about. You leave a place and build it up bigger in your memory, brick by brick, until you go back and it's just a house. Aluminum siding gone a little gray. A wheelchair ramp, bolted crooked over the front steps, that hadn't been there the last time I'd seen it in person. 3 Christmases before the calls started replacing the visits entirely. I sat in the rental car for 4 minutes before I got out. I counted them. Diane's car wasn't in the driveway. That was either luck or a problem, and I didn't know which yet. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, and this time I heard shuffling, slow, uneven, and then the door opened on a chain, and one eye looked out at me through the gap. "Renee?" "Hi, Dad." He unhooked the chain with hands that shook more than I remembered, and when the door swung open all the way, I saw him properly for the first time in 9 years. Thinner, grayer, wearing the same green cardigan he'd had since I was in high school, patched at the elbow now with a mismatched square of fabric. "You came," he said, and his voice cracked on the second word. "I came. Diane said you were too busy. She said you were always too busy. I didn't know you wanted me to come, Dad. She told me it upset your routine. She told me you didn't want." "I called you," he said, cutting me off, urgent now, gripping my forearm with a strength that surprised me. I called and called. Nobody ever. Did you get my letters? What letters? His face did something complicated then, confusion sliding into something closer to fear. I wrote you letters, every month. I gave them to Diane to mail because I don't drive anymore, and she said she'd mail them. The floor didn't move, but it felt like it did. I never got any letters, Dad. That's what I thought, he said quietly, and looked past me, out toward the empty driveway, like he was checking for something. That's what I was afraid of. That Puihan. Mom was in the back bedroom, propped up against 3 pillows, and when she saw me, her whole face rearranged itself into something I hadn't seen in years, not confusion, not the blankness Diane had described in call after call, but recognition, sharp and immediate. Dedowini. She reached for my hand. You look thin. Is she feeding you? Diane says you never eat right when you're working those long shifts. Mom, you know who I am. Of course I know who you are, don't be ridiculous. She said it with an edge of real irritation, the exact tone she'd used on me my whole childhood when I asked her something she considered obvious. Why would you ask me that? Diane told me you'd been having trouble with memory. That you didn't always, that some days you didn't know who I was. Something crossed her face, and it wasn't confusion, it was closer to caution. When did she tell you that? For years, Mom. That's what she's been telling me for years. Mom's hand tightened on mine. I have a bad hip, and cataracts, and I take too many pills, Renee. My mind is fine. A pause, longer than it should have been. Mostly fine. Mostly. There are days, she said, choosing the words like she was picking through broken glass, when I don't remember things I know I should remember. Things about money, about the house. She looked toward the door, toward the hallway, the same way Dad had looked toward the empty driveway. Diane says that's normal for my age. Is it? I don't know anymore what's normal, and what she's told me is normal, Mom said, and that was the sentence that made my stomach drop, because it wasn't confusion talking. It was a woman describing being managed, and knowing it, and not being sure what to do about it. I heard tires in the driveway. That's her, Mom said, fear plain on her face for the first time. Renee, don't tell her you know about the letters, not yet, please. I didn't have time to ask what yet meant before the front door opened. Doe, what are you doing here? Diane stood in the doorway of Mom's room with grocery bags still hanging from both hands, and her face had gone the particular shade of white that means someone's running 100 calculations at once. Visiting our parents, I said. Is that still allowed? You should have called first. Mom's not. This isn't a good day for her. She seems pretty sharp to me. You don't know what a good day looks like versus a bad one, Renee. You're not here. Diane set the bags down hard enough that something inside them clinked. You don't get to walk in after 9 years and start making assessments. Whose fault is that? Excuse me? 9 years, Diane. 9 years of you telling me not to come. Telling me it would upset them. Telling me you had it handled. I kept my voice level, the way I'd learned to on calls where the patient's family was the one losing control. And I just found out Dad's been writing me letters this whole time. Letters you said you'd mail. He gets confused about what he's actually done versus what he means to do. You can't take everything he says at face value. He's declining, Renee. That's the whole point. That's why I've had to Dad, I said, turning. Did you write me letters? He was standing in the doorway behind Diane, small, uncertain, but he nodded. Every month. I kept copies. In the drawer, in my desk, the blue folder. Diane's face did something very fast and very controlled, a flicker I almost missed. There is no blue folder, Dad. You're thinking of, there's a blue folder, Mom said from the bed, quiet but absolutely clear. I've seen it. The room went very still. I think, I said, I'd like to see it too. Diane didn't move for a long moment. Then she laughed, short and sharp, the kind of laugh that isn't about anything funny. You want to go through Dad's desk? After 9 years? You fly in for one weekend and you want to start auditing the house. Nobody said audit. That's what it sounds like. She crossed her arms. You know what it's been like, managing all of this alone? The doctor's appointments, the medication schedules, the calls to the pharmacy when insurance denies a claim, you have no idea, Renee. You weren't here for any of it, and now you show up and act like I've been hiding something. Have you? That's insulting. It's a yes or no question. Dad shuffled past her, slow, determined, toward the small roll-top desk in the corner of the room, the one that used to hold Christmas cards and the good stationery Mom saved for thank-you notes. He opened the top drawer. Pins, a broken calculator, a church bulletin from what looked like a year ago. No blue folder. No blue folder. It was here, he said, and his voice had gone thin. I kept it right here. Dad? Things get moved, Diane said, gentler now, the tone she probably used for both of them, soothing and final at once. I clean in here sometimes. I'd probably put it somewhere safer. Where's safer? I don't remember exactly, Renee. It's not like I inventory every piece of paper in this house. I have 100 things. Find it, I said. Please, just find it. Diane looked at me for a long moment, and something in her expression shifted from defensive to something colder, something calculating, and it was the first time in the whole visit I felt genuinely afraid of my own sister. Fine, she said. I'll look, tomorrow. It's late, Mom needs her medication, and you clearly need to calm down. She ushered Mom's water glass and pill organizer onto the nightstand with hands that weren't quite steady, and I noticed, I don't know why I noticed, except that noticing things is my job, that the pill organizer had 2 full rows still untouched, days that should have already passed. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Nast, nibblans, the wine pent you, the rentomawanta dinta wine on my meedum pent. I told myself it was so I could see them again in the morning. Some part of me knew it was because I didn't trust what would happen in that house if I wasn't there. Nimadaminam, mabintanda bentinanidimami noraminas tintinandinadinambinas shintum pent, and asked if I could come by. I wondered if you'd call, she said, letting me in, sitting me down at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't ask for and needed anyway. I've watched that house for 30 years, Renee. I watched you grow up in it. Tell me what you've seen, please, whatever it is. Pat was quiet for a second, weighing something. About 2 years ago, she said, your sister moved in, not all the way, but close to it, 3-4 nights a week, then 5. Around the same time, your parents stopped coming to church, stopped coming to the neighborhood cookout. Your mother used to call me every week, just to talk, and then the calls stopped. Why? I asked her once, at the mailbox, why she never called anymore. She said Diane worried it tired her out, talking on the phone. Pat's mouth pressed into a thin line. Your father asked me last spring if I'd mail a letter for him. Said he didn't trust the mailbox at the house anymore. I did it. I didn't ask questions, because it wasn't my business, but I kept thinking about it. Why didn't you say something sooner? Because a woman taking care of her aging parents looks exactly like a woman controlling them, from the outside, Pat said, not unkindly. You can't tell the difference by looking. You have to actually ask. Nah, me mind different, I know. I don't know if it's my place. Please. There was a moving truck, 6 months back. Took some furniture out of the house. The good dining set, I think, and some other things, art off the walls. Diane told your mother it was going to storage, for safekeeping, while some work got done on the house. Pat paused. There was no work done on the house. Now in this Adam von Diane, I drove back the next morning with a knot in my stomach that didn't loosen the whole way, and I hadn't even parked the car before I saw Diane on the front porch, arms crossed, waiting for me like she'd known exactly when I'd show up. We need to talk, she said, before you go back in there stirring things up. I'm listening. Sit down. I'll stand. I'll stand. She exhaled, long, like she was steadying herself for something rehearsed. 2 years ago Dad had a stroke. A small one. You didn't know that because I didn't tell you. And before you start, yes, I know how that sounds, but I made a decision, in the moment, that you didn't need one more thing on your plate when you were already working 60-hour weeks and barely sleeping. That wasn't your decision to make. Somebody had to make it, and around the same time, Mom's doctor started using the word dementia, early stage, and I panicked. Renee, I didn't know what that meant for their finances long term, for the house, for any of it, so I looked into it. I got power of attorney, both of them, financial and medical. The word landed like a stone dropped in still water. When did you tell them that? They signed it. They knew. Did they understand what they signed? Diane's face flickered. Dad understood, mostly. Mom was having a good week when we did it, if that's what you're asking. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if you told me. I'm telling you now. 2 years later, after I found out from a stranger at a mailbox that Dad's been writing me letters you never mailed. I was protecting them, Diane said, and her voice cracked in a way that almost sounded real. You don't know what it's like, watching two people you love disappear a little more every week, having to make every decision because nobody else is here to help make it. I would have helped. If you'd let me. Would you? Or would you have shown up for one weekend, decided everything was fine because Dad had a good day, and gone back to your life, feeling like you'd done your part? That landed somewhere true, and I hated that it did. Show me the finances, I said. Show me the blue folder, show me where the dining set went, show me all of it, and if it's clean, I'll apologize for every word I've said in the last 24 hours. Diane's jaw tightened. You don't get to demand an audit of 9 years of caregiving because you feel guilty. I don't feel guilty, Diane. I feel lied to. Careful, she said low. You don't know what you're about to unravel. No. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat at the motel desk with my laptop and did the only thing I knew how to do when the ground felt unstable. I made a list, the way I make a list on scene, the facts in order, no interpretation yet. Dad's letters, never mailed. Mom's cognitive state described as far worse than reality. Power of attorney, both parents, granted 2 years ago, never disclosed. Furniture removed under the story of storage, no renovation ever done. Pills untouched in the organizer, days behind. Church stopped. Neighborhood cut off. Phone calls from Mom's side stopped entirely. I called an elder law attorney the next morning, a friend of a friend, and asked what any of it meant, legally, if anything. On its own, she said, a POA isn't sinister, plenty of families do it exactly the right way. But the pattern you're describing, isolation from outside contact, intercepted mail, unexplained asset movement, and a cognitive status that doesn't match what you're observing firsthand, that's worth a call to Adult Protective Services, not to punish anyone necessarily, to get an independent look. What if I'm wrong? What if she really has just been overwhelmed and cutting corners? Then the investigation clears her, and you know for certain instead of guessing, she said. But Renee, you called me because some part of you already isn't sure it's a corner-cutting story. She was right. I hated that she was right. I made the call that afternoon, hands shaking harder than they had on any scene in years. The investigator's name was Marisol, and she came out to the house 4 days later, calm, thorough, unreadable in the specific way people learn to be unreadable when their job is asking families to admit hard things. Diane met her at the door with the exact posture of a woman who believed she'd done nothing wrong, or had convinced herself of it so thoroughly it no longer mattered which was true. I've been the only one here, Diane told her, in the kitchen, while I sat across the table, trying not to look like a person who'd made the call that brought a stranger into her parents' living room. For years, I've paid for things out of pocket when the accounts ran low. I don't understand what I'm supposed to have done wrong by stepping up when nobody else would. I'm not here to accuse anyone, Marisol said evenly. I'm here to check on your parents' well-being and understand the financial picture, that's all. Can I see the accounts? Diane hesitated, just half a second too long, of course. She pulled statements from a drawer, and I watched Marisol's face as she scanned them, watched the small pause when she got to a page, flipped back, flipped forward again. There's a transfer here, Marisol said. $11,000, 8 months ago, out of the joint retirement account, to an account that isn't in either of your parents' names. The kitchen went very quiet. That's for their care, Diane said. Home health aid costs, supplement costs, things insurance won't cover. The account it went to, Marisol said, checking, is in your name, is that correct? I run the household expenses through my account. It's simpler, I keep receipts. Do you have those receipts? Diane's mouth opened, closed. Some of them, not. I'd have to go through my records. There's a second transfer, Marisol said, quieter now. 4 months ago, 15,000. Named. I watched my sister's face while a stranger read numbers off a page that told a story she hadn't told anyone, and I felt something crack open in my chest that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with dread, because whatever this was, it was bigger than a woman cutting corners on caregiving. I can explain both of those, Diane said, and her voice had gone very small. That was the first twist. Not that she'd hidden the money. I'd half expected that by then, some version of control dressed up as care. It was the number. $26,000, unaccounted for. moved quietly out of two people's retirement while I was told, week after week, that everything was handled. Non addendum. Explain them then, I said. Diane looked at me, and for the first time in the whole visit, she looked less like a woman defending a decision and more like a woman about to lose something she'd been holding together with both hands for a very long time. Not in front of her, she said to Marisol, meaning me. Please. Marisol gave her the choice. Say it now, in front of family, or say it later, in a formal interview, with the numbers already speaking for themselves, either way. Diane chose now, maybe because delay felt worse than exposure. Maybe because some part of her had been waiting 2 years for someone to finally ask. Mason's been sick, she said. The name meant nothing to Marisol. It meant everything to me, her son, 16. I hadn't seen him since he was 7. Sick how? I said. A kidney condition. It's been going on for 3 years. Insurance covers some of it, not all of it, and there's a specialist 2 states over we've been seeing since the local doctors ran out of options, and none of that is covered. None of the travel, none of the consultations. Her voice broke, actually broke, for the first time since I'd arrived. I didn't know what else to do. I told myself it was a loan. I told myself I'd pay it back once his treatment was farther along and things stabilized. I told myself a lot of things. You told me nothing, I said. For 3 years, you let me think you were just choosing to keep me out. You let me think this was about control, or spite, or whatever I decided to believe, and it was. You were drowning, and you didn't ask for help. Man, to mothers, I couldn't. Diane wiped her face hard with the back of her hand. You'd have told me to come to you, to ask for money, or to bring him to your city for treatment, and I couldn't do that, because then you'd have known, and if you knew, you'd have wanted to be involved in everything, and I'd already built this whole system, where I was the one who knew what was best, where I decided what Mom and Dad could handle. And admitting I needed help with Mason meant admitting the whole system wasn't actually about them. It was about control. It was about needing to be the one person holding all of it, because if I wasn't, I didn't know who I was. Nobody said anything for a while. Marisol wrote something down, quiet, professional, giving the silence room to exist. Did Mom and Dad know? I asked. About any of it? The transfers, Mason? Any of it? Diane shook her head. I told myself I'd tell them eventually. Once it was resolved. Once I could frame it as something that had a happy ending instead of a mess. She looked up at me, eyes red. I read Dad's letters, Renee, before I decided not to mail them. I read every single one. He wrote about you like you were still 11 years old, like you still needed him to check your bike tires before you rode to school. He missed you so much it was unbearable to read, and I still put them in a drawer, because some sick part of me thought, if he misses her that much, and I'm the one who's actually here, doesn't that mean I matter more? That was the second twist, not the money. The reason underneath the money, that this had never fully been about greed at all. Not in the simple way I'd assumed, but about a woman so certain she'd become invisible next to her sister's absent-shaped importance, that she'd built an entire fortress out of being needed, brick by brick, letter by unmailed letter, until the fortress needed feeding and there was nothing left to feed it but numbers she never meant anyone to see. Mine meant anyone to see. Not in Yimaniam to Sunday Binyong de Manamampide. I didn't know what to do with that. I still don't, fully, knowing Nanda Sanchamandandamam. Manuzol's investigation took another 6 weeks. In the end, nobody went to prison. Diane wasn't a stranger who targeted vulnerable elders for profit. She was a daughter who'd made increasingly bad decisions trying to solve an impossible problem alone, and the county's process reflected that. She was removed as sole power of attorney. A court-appointed fiduciary now oversees the accounts jointly, with both of us as secondary decision-makers, required to sign off on anything over a small threshold. Diane agreed to a repayment plan for what she'd taken. Slow, unglamorous, monthly, the way most real consequences actually look, instead of the courtroom clean ending you see in movies. Mom's cognitive testing came back better than Diane had ever described, and worse than I wanted it to be. Early, mild, real, but real in a way that meant conversations, not custodial care, not yet. I knew things weren't adding up, Mom told me, the week the investigation closed, sitting on the porch with a blanket over her knees. I just didn't have the strength most days to fight about it. It's easier to let someone else hold the truth when you're tired. Even when you suspect the truth they're holding isn't the real one. Why didn't you call me, just once, even a short call? She told me you'd feel obligated to come back and give up your life for us, Mom said. I didn't want that for you, I still don't, entirely. She looked at me for a long moment. Is that selfish? Wanting you close? And also not wanting the version of close that costs you everything? I don't think that's selfish, Mom. I think that's just love with fear stapled to it. She laughed, small and tired, and squeezed my hand. Dad found the blue folder eventually, in a box in the garage, where it had been moved during the storage that never turned into renovation. 11 letters. I read them all in one sitting, at his kitchen table, while he sat across from me nervously refilling my coffee every time I took 2 sips, like he needed his hands to be doing something. The last one, dated 7 months before I ever found out any of this was happening, said, I don't know if you'll ever get this. I don't know if anyone's mailing these, or if they just pile up somewhere unread. But I want it written down somewhere that I think about you every day, that I'm proud of the work you do even if it scares me, and that if we don't get to talk again the way we used to, I want you to know it was never because I stopped wanting to. I didn't cry in front of him. I waited until I was back at the motel. Deanne and I don't talk every Sunday anymore. We talk less, actually, which surprised me. I'd expected the truth to bring us closer, the way it does in the stories where everything gets said and everyone hugs and the wound closes clean. It didn't work that way. Some Sundays we don't talk at all. Some weeks the silence between us feels like punishment, and other weeks it just feels like 2 people learning an entirely new shape for a relationship that used to run on lies neither of us fully admitted to needing. Mason's still in treatment. It's going better, slower than anyone wants, but better. I send money sometimes, not because Diane asks, but because he's my nephew, and I missed 9 years of birthdays I didn't know I was missing, and there's no elder services investigation that can hand that back to me. Last month, Diane called on a Wednesday, not a Sunday, which was its own small earthquake. I don't expect you to forgive all of it, she said. I know that's not how this works. I don't know what I've forgiven yet, I said, honestly. Some days more than others. That's fair. A pause. Dad asked about you today. Real question, not confusion. He wanted to know if you were coming for his birthday. Tell him yes. I will. Another pause. Longer. Renee, for what it's worth, I am sorry. Not the version of sorry I said to Marisol, because I had to. The other kind. I believed her, mostly. I think mostly is as honest as either of us can be right now, and for the first time in 9 years, that felt like enough to build something small on, instead of a lie big enough to bury a whole family under. If this story moved you, like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every comment. See you in the next story.